Okay, so for the recorded audience or for all of us here, this year is dedicated to nishmas, my uncle Avram Yitzchak ben Yaakov Zev, Alvin Lew Shalom. Should we get the better for Klal Yisrael and be a good shliach for us in the next world? So the Gemara, we're talking about the Inyan. We're talking about the Inyan, the concept of Ari Miklat. We're here at the bottom of page 9 of Testament Bays. By the Gemara, Taner Rabbanan. Right. Taner Rabbanan, the Rabbanan learned Shalosh Aram Hivdalu Moshe Rabbeinu Yarden. Before his death, Moshe Rabbeinu set aside 3 cities of refuge on the other side of the Jordan. Ukenegdan Hivdil Yoshua Be'eretz Canaan, and Yoshua ben Nun, his trusted servant, set aside 3 cities opposite them in the land of Canaan. We mentioned this already last week. This way we'll go through it quickly. And they and those in Canaan and those east of the Yarden were parallel to each other, like 2 rows in a vineyard. Chevron Yehuda Keneged Batzer B'Midbar. Chevron, which is in Judah and the area of Yehuda, was parallel to Tsar in the Midbar, in the desert. Shechem, the famous Shechem, Bahar, Ephraim, in the mountains of Ephraim, Keneged Ramos Begilad, opposite Ramos Gilad. Kadesh, Bahar, Naphtali, Kadesh in the mountain of Naphtali, Keneged Golan Bashan is opposite the Golan in Bashan, which is basically an area outside of Eretz Yisrael. Og Melech Bashan, that area was actually annexed by Moshe Rabbeinu in that epic battle where he destroyed them. Kadesh we already did. V'shilashta says the pasuk in Yud Tes Gimel in Devarim. The pasuk says you shall divide it into thirds. Sheyihu mishulashin. Here we learn that the land should be dissected into 3 areas. The cities should be designated in such a way that there are equal stretches of land between them. We mentioned the middle area had a closer, it was an eighth of distance away because there were more murderers in Shechem, we mentioned. Also, the Gemara is going to ask how come the other side has a disproportionate amount of Ari Miklat based on its population, only had 2.5 tribes. Also because Gilad, as we're going to see, had a propensity, had a penchant for murder. People there were, I guess, hot-tempered, bloodthirsty, whatever bad meter you want to look at. So it was trisected such that if you went south from Hebron to Hebron is the same distance as from Hebron to Shechem, and Mechevron l'Shechem Shechem l'Kadosh, from Hebron to Shechem like Shechem to Kadosh, Umeshchem l'Kadosh, from Shechem to Kadosh Kimikadosh l'Tzafon, like from the Kadosh to the north, and from the north all the way down to Kadosh would also be a short distance. And this is done in such a way that people all over Eretz Yisrael can have an easy time running to the Ar Miklat so that they survive and don't get destroyed. So Gemara wonders at the statistical imbalance why there are the same amount of Ari Miklat both on the Aver Yarden side. We only had 2.5 tribes, and then you had the same amount of Ari Miklat designated for the other 10 and change. So Be'aver Yarden Tlas, Be'eretz Yisrael Tlas, 3 across the Yarden to serve only 2 tribes of Ruvain, Gad, and half of Menashe, and 3 in Eretz Yisrael to serve the rest of the tribes. I mean, all you had on the other side was Ruvain, Gad, and half of Menashe, and there you had the rest of the tribes. It doesn't make sense. So Rabbi answers, Begilad Shchichei Beitzchem. In Gilad, on the east bank of the Yarden, murderers were more common. Let's just do the Rashis on the bottom. 3 lines on the bottom. Okay, Rashi's on the left side of the daf when you're looking at the actual Vilna daf. Divrei Maskal Umchuvanas Hayu Elu Neged Elu. These against these parallel to those. B'shtei Shurais, 2 rows. Kamosh Shtei Shurais Shevakam, like 2 rows in a vineyard. Says the next Rashi, Helik Rashi, V'shalashta as Gavul Artzacha Sheyihu Mishalashis Kloimar. Again, when Rashi says Kloimar, this means that you would not be able to come to this conclusion on your own. You need Rashi to fill in the blanks. Kloimar, this is to say, Shemitz Chalekes, Haaretz, Chaluka, Rachava, that the area was divided into a large and wide swath of Eretz Yisrael, Arbas, Revim to 4 quarters. Kamosha Farish, like we're going to explain. Like you looked at the map in Taisus last week, you had 3 dotted lines, but altogether you had 4 areas. Kamosha Farish, Halach Sheyu, Midraim, Eretz Yisrael, Chevron, the southern tip of Eretz Yisrael to Hebron should be the same distance as Hebron to Shechem. So you had 4 sectors, but you had 3 sectors, but you have 4 areas altogether. The 4th areas are the north and southern tips to the nearest town to them. That's how you have 4. Be'ever Yarden plus, says Rashi, Bitmia. Tmiya means it's a question. Bitmia. It's a wonder. Benachla Shnei Shvatim.
What did you say? Bitmia?
Bitmia means it's a wonderment. It's like, whoa. It's a question like, what? That's what Bitmia means. It's a question.
Right.
But it's not just a regular question. It's a hot chili pepper question. It's a very, very difficult, like, what's going on? So Bitmia, the Nachlas Shtei Shvatim in the inheritance. Nachla is an inheritance, but we're going to translate, that's basically literally translated. I'm going to loosely translate it more in the colloquial. Basically, it means in the portion of Shnei Shvatim, in the portion of 2 Shvatim, it's not really 2, it's 2.5, but Rashi is basically just telling you 2. In the portion of 2 Shvatim, Shalosh is 3, meaning they have 3 cities of refuge. Kemo, the Nachlas Asara Shvatim. It doesn't make sense that you have the same amount of Ari Miklat in a section that has only 2.5 Shvatim, and have the same amount in a side that has the other 10 and change. Doesn't make any sense. Says Rashi Begilad. Why do we have the same amount? Says the Gemara, because Begilad, Shahaya Be'ever Yarden, which was in the Transjordan, Shchiche Reitzchem. There were a lot of Reitzchem. There were a lot of people that murdered, and therefore they needed the Ari Miklat. Why? Because when people would kill B'mezid, it says Taisus. Let's look at quickly at the last Taisus. We did it already, but it's Kedai to do it again. The last Taisus on the bottom over there on the right side. Begilad Shchiche Reitzchem Pirish. And that's why we needed L'Ari Miklat, to have the Ari Miklat on the other side of the Aver Hayarden, Lefi Kishahargin Mezid B'loi Edom, when they would kill B'mezid B'loi Edom. Kadosh Baruch Hu Mezam L'Pundak. This is the Gemara later on. Hashem would basically make it such that both the murderer who killed B'mezid without Edom would meet the murderer who killed B'shoigig without Edom. The guy who killed B'shoigig would fall off the ladder, strategically fall on the guy that killed B'mezid, and that's the story later on. And basically, Taisus was bothered by, wait a minute, if he's Mezid, then how does he end up getting killed? I mean, like, what's going on? So Taisus basically cuts to the chase and tells you that he killed B'mezid but without Edom. Okay? Or he only had 1 aid. Or the Edom were Karav Apostle. Whatever the scenario is, he got away with murder, and I say that tongue-in-cheek, but not really. Okay, let's turn the page. Okay, we have an epic accomplishment here, Baruch Hashem. We're now up to the top of Yud Amid Aleph. We're almost at the halfway point of this wonderful Gemara. Now, we said that in Gilad, there were people that were Reitzchem that had propensity to kill. The Ksiv, like it says in the Pasuk, Gilad Kiryas Pale Oven. Gilad is a city of evil doers. Kiryas, like Kiryas Arba. Kiryas means a city. Okay, Kiryas Pole Oven, in a city of evil doers. Akuba Bedam, filled with those who waylay for blood. This is in Hosea, Perek Vav Pasuk Ches. Basically, they have people that gather around as highwaymen. Okay. So, fact the Gemara, my akuba bedam. What does it mean that they who waylay for blood? What does waylay for blood mean? So says on the Reb Eliezer, shahayu oikvim laharog nefoshes, that they would wait in ambush in order to murder people. So Gemara questions another imbalance. So fact the Gemara, umayshna mahai gisa de merchake. What is it that the people living on this side and on this side, meaning north of Kadesh and south of Hebron and Eretz Yisrael, were far from cities of refuge? And what's the difference? The people in the middle had it closer. If you look at the note number 1 on the bottom, it says, as we learned on the previous daf on Tesla days, the land was divided into 4 parts: Hebron to the south and Kadesh to the north, were a quarter of the land away from the respective borders, meaning that the people living near either border had to flee up to a quarter of the land to reach a city of refuge. People living in the center of the country were never more than 1/8 of the land away from the city of refuge, since there were cities of refuge both to the north and to the south of them. So people in Hebron, for example, or in Shechem rather, would have it, the cities near Shechem would have a shorter distance of travel. So effectively, why? So Abaye says, the same reason that we say get a disproportionate amount of Ari Miklat on the Transjordan side was because Gilad had a propensity to kill. Same is true by Shechem. A lot of murderers in Shechem. Niksiv, like it says in the Pasuk, Ukechake ish gedudim chever kohanim derech yiratzchu shechama. It's like it says, like gangs awaiting a man, a band of kohanim, murderers on the road to Shechem. Again, this is also in Hosea. Having cited this verse, the Gemara inquires, so my chever kohanim, what does it mean, a group of kohanim? Surely kohanim were not killers, says Rashi. So why do we mention kohanim? Reb Alvin Lew ZT, that these highwaymen, these gangs, right? We had gang violence. Jews had gang problems too. Okay, they were gang bangers too. They were also bad people living there. It wasn't just something the Bloods and the Crips. It's not something we have the Latin Kings, the Sharks and the Jets. We don't have that. It's not just that. Klal Yisrael had its fair share. This is before. This is Friedrich from Bugsy Siegel and Maya Lansky. These are the Zaydas, the Alta Zaydas. They were also murderers. They would band together, these people would band together to kill people. They would gather around to kill people, just like the Kohanim would gather around by the threshing floor. The Kohanim would get there and wait for their portion of Truma. So too, similar to that kind of situation, the murderers would band together to basically kill people, to exact evil behavior and evil actions on people. So coming back to analyze the Mishnah, the Gemara asks, Suleka, all you said there was 6 Ari Midlag. Was that all? The Hawks, we say later on, the same Parsha, talk about the Parsha, excuse me, I'm just boring myself. We're talking about the Parsha in Bamidbar, Lamed Hey Pasuk Vav. It says there, V'ha ksiv alehem titnu arboim ushtayim ir. But it says, and in addition to them, in addition to the six cities of refuge, you shall add 42 cities. And these are 42 cities of the Levium. So you have 42 plus 6. Survey says 48. So why are you telling me I only had 6 cities of refuge? The Pasuk says you have an additional 42, making it a grand total of 48. So Abaye answers and explains, Halalu koltos bein ladas, bein shlo ladas. These 6 did not require you to know that you were in there. In other words, the minute you walked in, you were afforded protection. Masha'enkin, the other 42, the Gol Adam caught you there and you had no idea that you were in Ari Miklat. You were just spacing out. You didn't know what you were doing. He can catch you there. So that doesn't
wait. What's the difference between the?
In other words, if you got it, if let's say the Gol Adam, this is a crazy case, but just to answer you, let's say they brought you in on a stretcher. The Gol Adam saw you brought in on a stretcher, asleep. Right? They had those, like the rickshaws. They saw you sleeping, and they left you there, and you were sleeping. The Gol Adam could sneak, could shoot you, right? Let's say let's say they got into it in 2,000 amas, and the Gol Adam saw that this guy had no idea that he was an Ari Miklat. He was able to ascertain from the situation he's allowed to kill him, but by the situation of the regular 6 cities, Ashi, we're in the top of Yudam and Aleph, where we had the regular 6, right? Those regular 6 were on a madrega where you didn't even need to have intent. You didn't even need to know that you were in an Ari Miklat. Ari Miklat automatically protected you. Let's do some Rashis. Rashi's top of Yudam and Aleph says Rashi Oikvin, right? Orvin, meaning that they ambush. They're hiding and waiting in the background, ready to pounce. So it says the next Rashi, Mahai Gisa Umahai Gisa the Merchake, Chevron Kadesh. Right? We said, why is it that the border towns in the north and the south have a quarter of the land of Eretz Yisrael to go? Mashenke, the middle area by Shechem, the cities near Shechem have a shorter distance to go. So Chevron Kadesh, Rechakos Mekvulei Haaretz are far from the borders of Eretz Yisrael. Shnei Revi'ei Haaretz, 2/4. In other words, each way it's a quarter of the land in each direction. V'hareg b'soif ha'gavul, somebody kills at the edge of the gavul of the boundary. Sarach lanos Revi'ei Haaretz has to run a quarter of the land. U'maishna mitziai the mekarve. And what's the difference about the middle ones that are closer? Ha'hareg ben Chevron l'Shechem, like if somebody kills somewhere between Chevron and Shechem, or ben Shechem l'Kadesh, or between Shechem and Kadesh, Karav l'Miklat Mikan Lakan. They're close to an Ari Mikla from here and here. So let's say somebody killed in Hebron, he can go run to Shechem. Somebody killed in Kadesh, he could run to Shechem. He has a very, very close distance that he can run. And as such, he's able to really, 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 get away with murder, get away with running there very, very easily. So the Gemara is asking, why is it that they had such a short distance from the middle of Eretz Yisrael, whereas those people that killed in the northern or southern borders had a much further distance to run? So the Gemara then asks, answers that Shechem had a lot of people that killed, and therefore that was the story of Shechem. So the Gemara then asked, what's the story with only 6 Ari Miklat? We know there were another 42 for a total of 48. So the Gemara answers that the 42 cities were only protected you if you had intent to be there. But if you had no intent to be there, it did not protect you. Masha'en, the other 6, the ones that were openly said by Moshe Rabbeinu, the 6 in Evrayad and the 6 in Eretz Yisrael, those who protect the person even when they didn't know they were there. So it says Rashi, we're now in Yud Amud Aleph, 4 lines in the bottom, Bein Ladas, Bein Shalal Ladas, so Rashi, Bein Shebarach Sham, whether he ran there Ladas, whether he ran there with intent, knowing that it's Ari Miklat, Klita, it would then be Kailit, it would then give you refuge. Bein Shaloi Baruch Sham, whether he did not run there Ladas with intent, Klita, would still work. Even if they didn't know that it protected, it would protect. Masha'en in the other 42, it wouldn't work like that. Okay, so now we're back.
This is where that old expression comes from.
What?
Location.
Pretty much.
Really?
Pretty much, yep. Now, the Gemara is going to ask a question. We mentioned that Hebron is one of the Ari Miklat in Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara asks about Hebron. The Hebron ir Miklanu, was Hebron a city of refuge? Siv, it says in the pasuk, Vayitnu l'Kalev es Hebron kasher diber Moshe. It says they gave Hebron to Kalev as Moses has spoken. This is found in Judges and Shoftim, Parak Aleph, pasuk Chav. Now Kalev was from Yehuda; he was not a Levi. Whereas the cities of refuges were all given to Levium. All 48 belonged to Levium. So how could you tell me Hebron was an Ar Miklat if Hebron was given to Kalev, who was from Shevet Yehuda? It doesn't make any sense. So, and for the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Parvot.
Wait a minute, the Levi didn't have a portion.
That's right. They only had the Ari Miklat. That's it. That's all they had. They had 48 cities. That's it. They had no other portion. Those are cities designated for Levium, and that's it. They didn't have it. They had sporadic little cities all over the country, but they didn't have a portion like a state. Like there was no united. You had a bunch of states, 12 city states, 2.5 Aver Yarden, and then you had the balance in Eretz Yisrael. Levi did not have a full section dedicated to itself. It had little cities all over the place, but it didn't have its.
How did they eat?
Okay, they ate truma. I'll tell you, they had Meiser. They also worked in the Beis HaMikdash. They also taught. They were tutors. They were also involved in real estate. They owned houses. They owned property in the cities of refuge. So when somebody would come, later on the Gemara is going to go back and forth about whether you paid rent or you didn't pay rent, but in most of the cities you would have to pay rent to the Levium. So if you're paying rent, you're making money on the property. The Levium were not dirt poor. They were not running around in ragged clothing. They were not daddy warbucks. They were not super rich, but they earned a living by being public servants pretty much. They were your quintessential city workers, okay? And they made money by being supported by the Yidden. So again, how do you say the Hebron is an Ari Miklat if it belonged to Yehud, somebody from Yehuda? So Abaye answers, Parvodha. They gave to him its surrounding area. When we say Hebron, it's like the tri-state area, right? When we say tri-state area, it includes other cities besides New York City. It includes Connecticut, it includes cities in Jersey. So the outer areas of Hebron, not Hebron proper, but the suburbs, if you will, of Hebron, belong to Kalev. But Hebron itself, Hebron proper belonged to the Levium, and that answers that steer. Again, Amar Abaye Parvada. They gave to him its surrounding area, but the city itself was designated a city of refuge and assigned to the Levium. The Ksiv, because it says in the pasuk, V'es Sedei Ha'ir, V'es Chatzera, Nasta l'Kalev ben Yefuna. Like it says, in the fields of the city and its villages, they gave to Kalev, the son of Yehuda. The Gemara asks, "But Kadesh ir miklot have? Is Kadesh an ir miklot? Haka Kadesh ben ir miklot? Vaksiv." It says in the pasuk, "Va'ari miftzar hatzidim, tser v'chamas, rakas, v'kineres, v'kedesh, v'edroi, v'ein chotzer." But it says, and in the fortified cities, Tzidin, Zer, Hamas, Rakas, Kineres, Kedesh, and Edrei, and Ein Etzor, V'tanya, and we learned in a brisa, Aram Halalu, Ein Oisin Osun Lo Tirim Ketanim. These cities of refuge may not be designated from among small forts. V'loi Krachim Gedol, not big cities. Ela Ayaras Beininus, they have to be middle-sized cities. Therefore, it's clear that Kadesh, one of the large fortified cities in the pasuk, could not have been a refuge city. Now, we're going to explain why a large city could not be an Ari Miklat. Very simple. Because in a large city, a Goel Adam can easily sneak in and do the deed and run out. Listen, if a person murders somebody in New York City, and he does it carefully, meaning he doesn't leave any evidence, nothing, no cameras, no witnesses, it's very easy for him to disappear, get on a plane, and go to Nigeria and never be found again. Like the Russian mafia does. They'll have some people come in, they'll do a hit, quietly, leave no evidence, and they're on the next plane back to Moscow, and nobody knows no one's the wiser.
I'm told if you want to get seriously now, you want to get incognito, you go to Canada and you go to the West, and then you make an international connection. Somehow, when you get West in Canada, it gets real murky. I don't understand it. I haven't heard this once. I've heard this several times.
And that's why the draft dodgers will go to Canada in Vietnam. It's very easy to get. Yeah, you get lost, right? So you have a large metropolis, a huge city, and we're talking about in ancient times. It's not like they had, forensics and FBI, crime scene investigation. A guy comes in an FBI jacket with his little duster, and then and basically test for DNA and blood. They didn't have that kind of technology then.
Hold on, let me throw one other thing into the soup. When you in this country, when I'm back with the census again as a supervisor, when I was a field rep, I used to do something called group quarters. Go to nursing homes, homeless shelters. Okay, there's a way of taking out 10 interviews without boring you. Once or twice a year, I would go to the federal pen. Interesting work if you can get it. Okay, when you go to it's not Costco's on 3rd Avenue and 39th Street, go down towards the water.
I know.
Make a right turn.
There's a prison.
The largest federal pen in the United States.
Yes, I know. I passed it.
Go there every year. Okay.
I've passed it.
What?
I have passed that area.
Okay. What it is I have never seen, and also there's one by JNR, what used to be JNR in downtown Manhattan by Pace University. I have never seen how you could make edifices that size kind of like blend into the whole,
skyline.
Skyline. It's amazing. If you did not know that those places were there, you'd never find it.
And can you imagine Retzeach, easily a killer, a hired killer, an assassin, coming in to kill somebody, do a quick job, right? Put a bullet in the guy's head quietly with a silencer and walk out. And no one's the wiser. 3 or 4 days later, they find the body there, stiff. Nobody knows who, what, where, when. The guy's already halfway around the world. He's back in Egypt. He's back in who knows where. Anyway, weiter. So the Gemara says, how could you tell me that Kedesh is an Ari Miklat if it was listed as one of the large fortified cities? So Rav Yosef Tarti Kache, there are two cities named Kadesh. And Rashi says, for example, the Dom Salikim va'akroy the Salikim, like the city of Seleucia and the village of Seleucia. So it's possible to have Paris, France, and Paris, Texas. Okay? Right? What is New York? York was a town in England, right? In northern England, I believe. So New York, right? Or New Amsterdam, right? You have Amsterdam and then you have New Amsterdam. So it doesn't mean Kadesh, the Kadesh that is a large metropolis is not the one that is an Ari Miklat. Let's see Rashi. Parvatsa. Parvatsa is about 10 lines in the top. The right side of Yoram and Alf, Parvadha, right? Kfarim, little towns, villages, the Chatzarim and their courtyards and their their outer areas, hasamuchos law, that are connected to it. V'nikros al shema nitnu l'kolev, and they're called with the name of Hebron, and those are given to Kolev. In other words, the suburbs, the outer areas outside, the satellite areas outside of Hebron belong to Kolev. But it was called Hebron, just like you can have, New York City, and then you have the little suburbs, little neighborhoods that kind of crop up near it. Okay. The Arei Mivtza, the next Rashi. Krachim Gedolim, large metropolises. Shahaya Benachlas Naphtali, that were in the area in the inheritance of Naphtali. Right? Hatzadim Tsar. Okay, fine. Let's go. Let me just see what Hatzadim Tsar means over there. Let me pull out the Mesifta, see if there's anything here to tell you. It's V'loi Krachim Gedolim. Give me a moment. V'loi Krachim Gedolim. 1 second. V'loi Krachim Gedolim. Aha. V'loi Krachim Gedolim. V'ari Mivtzar. Krachim Gedolim Shalom Menachos Shvat. Ve'elohim. Hatzidim Tsar. Oh, these are names. Tzidim and Tsar. These are names of cities. Okay. They weren't. It's not a translation. These are names of cities. Next. So next of Arei Mivtzar, we did that already. Arim Halalu, these cities that we mentioned of Arei Miklat, they cannot be Tirim Ketanim, can't be small little places. Lafisha Ein Mazon is Mitsuyin Shem. You can't have a little hick down with a bodego and call that a city of refuge because you don't have adequate food, right? V'loi Krachim Gedolim, not big cities. Sha'akol Nikbatzim Shem. Everybody gathers there. Tamid always. V'hi Ragel Goyel Adam. Matzoi Sham, and so V'yihei Regel Goyel Adam Matzoi Sham, and the foot of the Goyel Adam, and as the Goyel Adam would have a presence there very often, V'yaravlo, and then we'll wait in ambush for him and kill him. And then the next one says, what about Kadesh? There's two kinds of Kadesh, just like Gagain, Silikum. Silikum is Ir Mivtzar, it is a fortified city, V'yesh Kfar Samuch, and there's a little town nearby, Hanikra Akra the Silicam. It's called Akra the Silicam, Kach Kadesh. Same with Kadesh, Ha'ir Mivtzar, that was a very fortified city. The Ir Beinani, and a in-between city, a city of medium size, Smuchaloi, that was next to it, Hanikras Al Shema, called by its name, and that medium-sized city was the Arei Miklat, because an Arei Miklat cannot be too small, because it wouldn't have enough food, cannot be too big, because then the Goel Adam would be found there. Somebody had a quick question? But I want to keep the question straight to the Gemara, I don't want to go off topic. Anybody have a question on topic? Okay. Now, we'll go further. Okay, so we said that. Now, we're going to talk about the halachas of our miklets. It's fascinating what to do, how far do we have to go as far as making it a habitable city. Gufa. Gufa means we're going back to something that we mentioned before. The Gemara now quotes the full text of the Bryce that we just cited.
I lost my place. I apologize.
Gufa is... 1 second. Gufa is the first thick line, first wide line in the Gemara on Yud Amud Aleph, in the middle, actually towards the end. Three words from the end of that. Okay. All right. Gufa. The text of the Brisa says, "Arim halalu, these cities of refuge, ein oisin leitirim ketanim, may not be designated from the small forts. V'lo krachim gedalim, not large cities. Ella ayaros beinanois, small mid-sized cities." We do not establish these cities unless there's a water supply there. There's no water supply, then you make a water supply. You dig ditches, you do what you got to do to make water happen. Nor can we establish these Arei Miklat unless there are marketplaces so that provisions will be readily available. You don't put it in a hick down somewhere with a small tiny general store and a cigar shop. It's not going to cut it for Arei Miklat. Nor do we establish them except where there is population centers nearby. Why do you need these population centers nearby? Because let's say the Goel Adam goes nuts and he brings an army against this Arei Miklat. They would then be able to call the nearby cities that have proper populations to come and ward off the attack. Nismatu uchlusehen mosifin aleim. If the surrounding area's population diminished, they would add to them. Nismatu the Yerhan Mevian Lahem Kohanim Levim Yisrael. If the inhabitants of the Ari Miklat diminished, meaning they died out or left or whatever, they ran away because de Blasio was mayor, they bring Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim to live there. As we wanted to make it look like a normal city, right? We wanted to be people that have proper lineage, and they will have Jewish traits of modesty and compassion, and those are the kinds of people that we want living in Ari Miklat. Normal balance of all different swaths of Jewish life, real Jews, Jews with real lineage, who basically exhibit Jewish traits of mercy. And the NRA would not be happy with this. They may not sell weaponry, military weapons, or hunting weapons. So Joe Biden, Yimach Shemai, would be very happy. No AR-15s would be available in these Ari Miklat. You would not have AR-15s, not have samurai swords. They wouldn't be producing grenades or claymore mines or other weaponry over there. It was basically a weapon-free area. Okay.
Yeah, I just I thought that the Ari Miklat were run by the mothers of the Kohanim. I thought they
No, they didn't run it. They didn't run it. They would send care packages. They would send care packages so that
Mother.
so
the
that
mother of the Kohen Gadol.
right, the mother of the Kohen Gadol would send the care packages to all the Reitzchim so that they would not daven for the death of the Kohen Gadol. As we mentioned, and we will mention further, that the Kohen Gadol was required to pray for the welfare of Klal Yisrael, and since he did not do such a great job as a result of his poor Kohanic duties, or he did not discharge his duties properly, he was always in trouble or in danger of being davened against. So the moms would make sure to send all kinds of warm socks and gotchkas, all kinds of goodies, Archie comics and all kinds of Entenmann's cookies.
Archie comics, I
all,
like that.
All kinds of good stuff to keep the troops entertained. Anyway, getting back to the Gemara, we mentioned that we're not selling any Klei Zion or Klei Mitzuda. These are the words of Rabbi Nechemia. These were Rabbi Nechemia. V'chachamim matir. V'chachamim said you could sell weapons. V'shavin she'ein parsim b'soichem Mitzuda is ve'ein mafshilin soichem chavalim. You can sell weapons, but you can't have traps, and you can't lay traps within them, nor you can put ropes dangling within them for snares, because if the murderer would happen to go there and be able to get all these traps and all these other kinds of ropes, he'd be able to set a trap for the lzecher and kill him. So that the Redeemer of the blood should not have a path there. Because if you have all these things available, trapping is not permitted, and if it would be permitted, the Goldam would be able to enter unnoticed. Moreover, trappers tend to have weapons with them, and the presence of trappers would thus allow the Goldam to enter the city and obtain a weapon. Because he would go to a trapper and say, "Hey man, how many AR-15s do you have?" "Oh, I have 3. You need all 3? How about if I buy one off you? No problem." "Hey man, how much for that nice little Beretta?" "Hey man, how much for that nice Colt 45? I need one for my collection." "Oh yeah, I don't need this anyway. I'm okay with my Glock, my Glock 44. It's good enough. I don't need anything more." So you would have all these people that come with weapons. People come with weapons. They have more than they need many times, and they'd be willing to sell. Maybe one of them is hard pressed, has a payment to make on his car, and he can't do it, so he'll sell his AR-15 or his whatever. So we want to make sure that these murderers are safe. Now we move on. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Ma'ikra. What does it mean in the pasuk? V'nas alachas min ha'arma ha'el v'chai. Pasuk says in Devarim Perek Daled pasuk mem beis. It says v'nas alachas min ha'arma ha'el v'chai, and he shall flee to one of these cities and live. Avid lein midei that the heavy lechi yusah. This teaches that there's an obligation to provide him with arrangements that will enable him to live. You got to make the place a functional place. It has to have stores. It has to have, I would imagine, recreation areas, probably a place to go biking, gym, walk, a park, I don't know, a pond where you can go fishing. It has to be a normal, habitable place, not some sort of industrial park where you live inside of a warehouse and you got a Coke machine and a snack machine and that's the extent of the food that you're getting. No, it has to be a normal place where you can live a normal life. You can go to a farmer's market, you can buy fresh food, fruits and vegetables, you have a physician there, you have a hospital, you have a school, you have a mikveh, you have a yeshiva, you have a shul. It has to be a normal place anywhere you want to live. In other words, and you see the kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that this guy has to be uprooted from his regular life, and he has to be pulled out, extracted from there, and sent into exile. So at least let's make sure that it is as comfortable as possible for this individual who did not kill intentionally. Any questions thus far? Are we good?
Yeah.
All right, Tana. We go weiter. Heilige Gemara. Tana is taught in the Brisa. Talmud shegola mit gilin rabba imay. If a Talmud was a inadvertent killer, his Rebbe goes to Golis with him. Shenemar, like it says in the pasuk, v'choy, and he shall live, which implies avid le midei that tehavi le chiyusa. Provide him with arrangements that will enable him to live. And a student cannot survive without the one who teaches him Torah. Amazing. See Reb Kiva's mashal of a fish without water holds true over here. Amar Reb Zira. Reb Zira said, Mikan, from here we learn, Shaloi Yishna Adam the Talmud Sheina Kohagan. Don't teach a Talmud that's not proper. Why? If you're going to teach a bad Talmud, that bad Talmud may kill by accident, and then force you, the Rebbe, to have to abandon your yeshiva or transplant your yeshiva in your entire life to go to Galus with this person, which is a very, very painful thing. So be careful who you take in to your chabura. I vetted both of you guys passed muster, so we don't have to worry about it. Now, Amar Rav Yochanan said, Harav Shagola Magilin Yeshivasa Imai. The teacher is exiled, his academy, his yeshiva goes along with him into exile. Wow. The Gemara questions this, Eini, is this so? Amar Rav Yochanan said, Minayin, where do we know the Divrei Torah Shein Kolton? Where do we know that the Torah itself could be like a city of refuge to one who studies with them, and therefore protect them from all evil? Shenemar as Betzer Bamidbar, because it says concerning the city designated on Moshe Rabbeinu for refuge, Betzer in the desert. Ksiv Basrei, and the next pasuk it says V'zois HaTorah. The following pasuk it says, and this is the Torah that Moshe placed before Klal Yisrael, indicating that the Torah is comparable to a city of refuge. Why then should a teacher have to be required to pick himself up and run to Kadesh, run to Hebron, run to Gilad, run to Shechem, whatever? Why? Just let him sit in Beis HaMedrash and he's protected. Let the Beis HaMedrash be his Ari Miklat. Or let the yeshiva be the Ari Miklat. Why does he have to travel and schlep? Like Kasha, there's no difficulty. Ha be'idna dasid be. While somebody's learning, right, he's in the middle of learning, that's it. So that place, no matter where it is, that place becomes like an Ari Miklat. And the Gal Adam, let's say I'm giving shir and somebody wants to kill me because I'm the guy, I killed somebody accidentally. The Gal Adam can't touch me for the next 20 minutes because I'm giving chabura. So therefore, that doesn't really give you complete coverage. It gives you temporary coverage. Well, that rule that a Torah teacher must flee to a city of refuge is to be protected even at the time that he's not engaged in Torah study. Therefore, he has to go to the Ari Miklat proper. Second answer, V'boy Seimam. And if you prefer to say, my Kolton, what does it mean that the Torah provides refuge? While a person is learning Torah, the Malach HaMavis cannot kill him. Wow. And therefore, we see that, I guess, the Gal Adam can't touch him while he's learning. Kihad Rav Chizda, like we learned with Rav Chizda, the Havi Yosef V'Gares B'vei Rav, who was sitting and studying in the house in the yeshiva, right? Rav Chizda was always learning in yeshiva. Lahavi Kayachal Shlicha the Malach HaMavis L'Mikra L'Gabe, and the Shliach of the Malach HaMavis could never kill him. And he was frustrated. Malach HaMavis wanted to take Rav Chizda's soul. Rav Chizda was always learning, always thinking about learning, always learning, Yom and V'layla, and he got frustrated. He couldn't kill him. The Lahavi Shasik Mepuma Megirsa, because his mouth never paused from studying. So Salik v'Yosef Arza de Beirav. So this shliach of the angel of death went and sat on a cedar tree on the grounds of the house of study. Poka Arza v'Shasik. The cedar tree exploded, and he got startled, and he stopped learning v'Yachalei. And he, the angel of death, was able to prevail over him. Similarly with David HaMelech. David HaMelech knew that he would die on a Shabbos, Gemara and Brachas, and basically what happened was the Satan came and made some sort of noise, a rustling in a tree or something, Epis, caught his attention for a moment, and then of course David HaMelech went out to investigate. He fell, says the Gemara, and he broke his neck basically, and he died as a result of that fall. And that's how the Malach HaMelech got him. Gemara now introduces several Agaritas. This Gemara is very fascinating. These are all Haggadahs. Before we go on to the Haggadah, let's finish the Rashis on the right side. We are now about 10 lines from the bottom on the right side of Rashi. Divrei Maskal v'im ein sham mayim. What happens if you have an area of refuge that was designated, but that area of refuge has no mayim, has no water? Kishenaflu b'goyro b'mei Yoshua v'leviim hevi lahem amos mayim. So when these areas were given to the Levium in the Nachla, in the Goyrel, in the lottery, in the times of Yeshua, right, they would bring for the Levium these amos mayim, these ditches, these irrigation ditches of water. Achre came in Naharas, afterwards from the rivers, Harachaikim, that were far away. Says the next Rashi, you have to build an Arei Miklat b'makam shavakim. You have to build it in a place that have shvakim, which are marketplaces. That always have food, that always provide food to buy food. B'makam uchlasan, says Rashi, sheyuk farim v'yishuv smuchim lahem. There should be cities, little villages, and areas of population next to the Arei Miklat. Shelo yavu gol hadam merubim ala ir b'chayil, so that the gol hadam should not be able to come with great multitude and overwhelm the city of refuge with an army. If he would march on this city, the townspeople would be able to muster the National Guard, and they were able to depend on all the men of the surrounding cities. And therefore, and there's another parish that there has to be a standing army of strong men in each of the Arei Miklat to prevent the onslaught. There has to be a special shock troop or some sort of SWAT tactical unit. Talking about defunding the police, cannot defund Arei Miklat. They would have to have the ability to protect itself. So either way, whether there was a tactical unit inside the Arei Miklat or whether they were able to depend on the neighboring cities that provided them all kinds of shelter. Says the next Rashi, Klei Zayin. What does it mean, Klei Zayin? Weaponry, Shalayikna Goyladam Sham Zayin. So that the Goyladam, if you just move over to the other side, there's no Taisusam on this page, so the Goyladam would not be able to buy weapons of destruction, menacing weapons, deadly weapons, the Yaharik, and be able to kill. Shem Yavi Klei Zayin, because if he's able to bring Klei Zayin from his place, Yagishaboy. So in other words, if you don't sell weapons and a guy walks in with a bulge on his side, everyone's going to notice that here's a guy with a gun or something weird, or he has something scraping on the ground and they realize it's a sword. But if they sell weapons and everybody walks around like in Texas, with an AR-15 on the shoulder, then he just blends in with everybody else. And then he does his nefarious actions and his nefarious deeds, and he gets away with it because he just blends into the fauna. He blends into the crowd. But if nobody has weapons and he comes in like an airplane one, festooned with all kinds of weaponry right through the metal detector on the oven, what happens in such a situation? Everybody will notice that this guy is packing heat, and he has to be arrested and evicted, whatever they would do to him. Okay, Uklei Mitzuda, says Rashi. The next Rashi, the end of the line on the left side by the letter Yud on the top, says V'chlei Mitzuda Af Bahen Hargim Chayes. They would be able to kill. They had bear traps. Can you imagine a Goyal Adam with a bear trap? All we'd have to do is put it somewhere with a Retzech is walking. All of a sudden, the guy gets his foot stuck in it. He could leave him there; he'll bleed out, or he'll just kill him. He's stuck. He's got his claws all around his ankles. Very, very scary. Next Rashi, Mikra, the Maskinan Lahu L'Roitzchem Dava Shetzrichen Lei. That we have to be able to set up, as the pasuk there tells us, you have to give them a place of life, chiyusa, right? Ha'arim ha'el v'chai. You have to give them things, set up for them, for the Reitzchem, something that they need. In other words, they should be able to have an infrastructure that would provide for their needs. Says the next Rashi, L'talmud she'eino hagan. A Rebbe should not teach a Talmud that is not proper. Shelo yaviu avonosav lidei hariga, so that his sins will not bring him to killing. B'shaygeg, by accident, the Yigala, and then force him to go into exile. The Amr al-Kamal will say later on the days, Sheinu Matzei Elaber Shaim. People that kill by accident are the people that are wicked themselves. They have some wickedness in them that requires them to be punished. So if somebody kills accidentally, he's no tzaddik. He's not somebody that's a good guy. He's done something wrong. Otherwise, this would not have happened. Okay, let's just do a little bit more. All right, so we said a teacher cannot go, and we also said that the Torah is an Ir Miklat. That's only why you're learning it. Also, we brought in that, what do we mean that the Torah is an Ir Miklat? That's from the Malach HaMaves. We brought in that story with the cedar tree. Gemara goes on. Omer Rav Tamchun Bar Chani Loi. Rav Tamchun Bar Chani Loi is basically, I would say 10 lines from when he gets fat at the last line. Okay, at the end of the line. Omer Rav Tamchun Bar Chani Loi. So Omer Rav Tamchun Bar Chani Loi. Rav Tamchun Bar Chani Loi said, B'nei ma zocher Reuven lidmonos b'hatzalat chila. Why did Reuven merit that Betzer, the city of refuge, in the territory of the tribe of Reuven, be mentioned first with respect to being a city of refuge in the list of cities that provide refuge? His city was mentioned first. Because he was the first one to pursue rescue of Yosef. Right? He was the one that said, don't kill him, right? When remember everybody said, let's throw him in a pit and kill him, and let's destroy him. They wanted to kill him on the spot. Reuven said, let's put him in a pit. Why did he put him in a pit? So that he can come by later and pull him out and rescue him and bring him back to his dad, right? So because he was the first to pursue rescue in the case of Yosef. Shenemar, like it says, Vayishma Reuven, Vayetzileim biyadam. Like it says, and Reuven heard, and he saved them from their hands, from the hands of his brothers who intended to kill him. Says Rashi, Limanais, this is the fourth line from the top on the other side where the Rashi's on the left side. Limanais Batzal Tchila. Why was Reuven first? Why was his city of refuge mentioned first? Shepasak HaKosav, the Pasak opened. Pasak means opened. Kosav, the passage opened. Bo, with it, B'arei Miklat Tchila. And as his Arei Miklat was mentioned first, and we said why? Because he saved Yosef first. Darash Rabbi Simlai expounded, this was his famous drasha. My diksiv, what does it mean? Oz Yavdil. Moshe Shalish Aron Be'ever Yardim Mizracha Shemesh. What is the meaning of that which is written? Then Moshe designated 3 cities across the Yardim towards the rising sun, which is found in Dvarim, Perek Daled, Pasuk Mem Aleph. What is the significance of the Pasuk toward the rising sun? Amar Laya Kadosh Baruch Hu LaMoshe. Kadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, Hazreach Shemesh L'Raitzchem, cause the sun to shine for the murderers by providing for their needs while they're in exile. These guys have a stinky life. Make it light for them. Give them a good place to live. Ikadamri, some say, Amalei Hizrachta Shemesh L'Raitzchem. God said to Moshe, you have caused the sun to rise for the murderers. By separating 3 cities to provide them for refuge, you get the credit for giving them a place to run. Next Rashi, Hazara Shemesh L'Raitzchem. Lahachin lahem, to prepare for them, chiyusam, for their livelihood, could go in, for example, hanach mila deleo, like we mentioned before, water. They should have a place where there's refuge nearby, where there are people living nearby, so they can come to their aid. Hizrach shemesh l'reitzim. Moshe Rabbeinu was said that he caused the sun to shine for the reitzim. B'havdalah zu, by separating these cities, the yafa asisa, and he did a good job. So Moshe Rabbeinu gets a high five, a wink, or an okay symbol from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Next, Darash Rabbi Samoi. Rabbi Samoi expounded, my diksiv, what does it mean in the pasuk? Oyev kesef, lo yizba kesef, mi oyev b'haman lo tfua. What is the meaning in Kehelis? Ecclesiastes is Kehelis. Perek hey pasuk tas. What does it mean in the pasuk? A lover of silver shall not be satisfied with silver, and whoever loves a multitude has no produce. A lover of silver should not be sated with silver. Wow. This refers to Moshe Rabbeinu. He knew that he was dying, and then he knew that the 3 cities that he separated in the Ever Yadim would not work. Not until another 14 years when Yoshua ben Nun, his Talmud, would have separated everything. He knew it wouldn't work. The Amar, he said, nevertheless, mitzvah shabol yadi akimena. In other words, he looked at Torah, he looked at the mitzvah like silver, and he was greedy, and he went to the chaparine, even though he knew that it would be meaningless in the sense that it wouldn't work, but it doesn't matter to him. He still wanted to start the mitzvah. A mitzvah comes to your way, even though you can't complete the mitzvah, even though you may not see the peiros, you may not see the fruits of the mitzvah. Like, for example, we're learning now, right? Right now we're learning. we don't see the outcome of our learning. We don't see what the learning did for the world. We spent an hour together learning Torah, but we don't realize that we're creating worlds in the next world. Every word of Torah that we speak and say causes a tremendous impact, positive impact, both in the upper realms and in the lower realms where we live. But he nonetheless said, the mitzvah that has come my way, I shall fulfill. And he selected the cities of refuge across the Yarden. Samoy now expounds the next part of the Mishnah, next part of the pasuk rather. Umi ohev behamen le'savur. And whoever loves a multitude has no produce. Lemi no l'lamed behamen. For whom is it proper to teach many students? Mi shekol tvur shalai. One to whom all produce, scripture, Mishnah, and Gemara belongs. In other words, in order to teach, you have to be an expert in all branches of Torah. So I'm not really qualified to be teaching you. I'm not really teaching you. I'm learning together with you. We're kind of learning in a chavrusa shaft. I need to be, in order for me to be a teacher, I need to be somebody who knows all aspects of the Torah, Mishnah, Gemara, Tanakh, etc. V'hainu d'amar Reb Eliezer, and this is what Reb Eliezer said. Ma'id d'ksiv, what does it mean in the pasuk? Mi yamal gevuras Hashem yashmiya kol tehilosai. What's the meaning of the pasuk who says, "Who shall utter the mighty acts of Hashem, and who can declare all of His praise?" Which is found in Tehillim, Perek, Kuf, Vav, pasuk Beis. Pasuk teaches L'mi no l'mal gevuras Hashem. Who is it fitting? For whom is it fitting to utter the mighty acts of Hashem? Mi sheyachal hashmiya kol tehilosai. One who's able to declare all His praises. Who could declare all His praises? Somebody who's learned it. And Amma Aretz can't teach Torah. Almost done for tonight. The Gemara now cites an alternative interpretation to the previously cited pasuk. Rabbanan v'item Rabba Barak Mari Amar. The rabbis, and some say it's Rabba Bamari, say that the pasuk means Mi ahev behaman leitfua. He who loves multitude, to him is produce, which implies Kala ayev behaman leitfua. Whoever loves abundance, and as those who possess an abundance of Torah knowledge, to him shall be granted produce of Torah. And as Rashi explains, whoever loves Torah, to him he's going to be granted, the Torah will remain with him and his children. Meaning that there'll be progeny that come out of him that will promulgate and perpetuate the Torah. If you love Torah, your children will love Torah. Your kids see you learning, your kids see you have a chashivas for learning, then your kids will be interested, their kids will be interested, and you can have a mitzvah Shem Dari Darish, generations of Talmidei Chachamim that come out of you, all because you love Torah. And then what happened? Yahavu Bey Rabbanan Einahu Barava Bareid Rava. The rabbis looked at Rava, the son of Rabba, who was such a big Talmid Chacham of Torah, and of course he was elevated to greatness. Right? He was an outstanding Torah scholar, and his sons were such scholars. So he was elevated to greatness through his sons. So let's just do some more Rashis. Lalamid Bahamain, says Rashi, Lidrash Barabim, to give a drasha to many people. Shekol Tavua Shalai, says Rashi, Shafke b'mikra, b'mishnah, u'balachos, u'bagadis. And as he's able to learn all these areas of Mishnah, Halacha, Agadis, u'rabbanan v'itim Rav Mari Amar mi ayev b'haman, right? Ha'ayev Talmid Chacham leitfua, says Rashi, Ha'Torah machzeres, the Torah returns to him, Al-Zara and his kids, Kanarinam ba'amal, like we say on Shabbos, Daf Chav Gimel 23b, Hayman derachim Rabbanan, this man that has Rachmanis, loves Rabbanan, Havin le b'nei Rabbanan, is going to have kids that are rabbis. Yahiv Rabbanan and Ayev Rabba, Sha'ayev Talmidei Chachamim. The rabbis cast their eyes on Rabba, who loved Talmidei Chachamim b'yoser very much. V'hayu lo banim Talmidei Chachamim, and he had banim, children who were Talmidei Chachamim. Next Rashi. Actually, we'll stop over here. We'll stop over here. We'll pick it up over here. This whole Gemara is all Agadita. The next page is also pretty much like Drushis and Agadita. Very nice, light music. Now, let me just thank you all for coming, listening on YouTube. We're shutting off the YouTube live feed right now.